allow me to first give the floor to our two high-level speakers who will deliver the opening remarks to start the event. First, please allow me to invite Mr. Nick Siri, the founder of Interstellar Foundation. Nick, the floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Guests, speakers, those joining online. It's a true privilege to sit here. And as we gather at the intersection of two monumental forces, the transformational power of education and the boundless possibilities of space. Kindly allow us to thank our co-hosts, UNESCO IESALC, and their expertise and support in this exploration with the possibilities of Interstellar Foundation. Before I begin, I'd like to highlight some of the esteemed representatives that we have here from across the globe, including Partnership Accelerator DSA, Global Center for Pluralism, Global Student Forum, the UNESCO SD4 Youth and Student Network, UNESCO IESALC Bilbao Network, UNESCO Chair Youth Ambassador for Okayama University, University One Generation, Columbia University, Accept International, Deep Space Initiative, Future of Space, Higher Orbits Foundation, the Institute for Astronautical Studies, Jane's Planet, SDSN Portugal, Citizens of the Solar System. Thank you for joining us today. I'd like to propose a simple question. Why are young people so fascinated and captivated by space? Perhaps it's the desire to push beyond the familiar, the pursuit of the limitless and the awe-inspiring. This dream is mirrored in higher education, in the journey that people take in higher education. It's driven by a quest for knowledge, for discovery, and the search for one's place in the world. Both space exploration and higher education empower individuals to seek answers, define who they are, and importantly, who they wish to become. Together, these forces push the boundaries of what is possible, not only for individuals, but for humanity as a whole. Each new discovery, each breakthrough in the lab, each launch of a spacecraft builds upon the collective foundation that propels us forward. Every PhD earned, every rocket pad lays the groundwork for future generations to dream even bigger and go even further than we have. At the heart of the 2030 agenda lies higher education, a powerful tool that unlocks human potential, fosters innovation, and drives progress across diverse fields. Yet we must recognize that access to higher education and its opportunities are not available to everyone. Many young people, particularly in developing areas, face significant barriers despite their immense potential. These challenges include limited access to foundational STEM and uncertain pathways to higher education. This is why today's event is so important. This event is a call to action and to discuss possible solutions for these disparities. Together, we will explore the intersection of youth empowerment, higher education, space, pluralism. We'll explore how global collaboration can bridge the divides that separate us and how space can ignite and empower the next generation of leaders. As I conclude, let me leave you with this thought. The farthest objects away from the planets that have been created by human hands is a spacecraft called Voyager 2. This spacecraft was only launched through the collective efforts of countless individuals. Connected to the spacecraft on its journey in the galaxy is a story of humanity. We are here today to start a new story, one that reflects our time and our shared responsibility to create a better world for all. This new story is about us, what we can accomplish together. And at its core, we are a collective species. And this is our story. This is your story. Thank you all for your participation and your support today in our event and as we go forward in this collaboration.
Thank you so much, Nick. Now, please allow me to invite Mr. Francis Pedro, the director of UNESCO IESALC.
Well, good morning, good afternoon to everyone. I'm very excited to be here for two reasons. The first one is obvious. It's because this is an excellent partnership with Interstellar Foundation. It is something very new for us. and it's very promising. So I'm really excited for you giving us this opportunity. And the second is because of something which is very personal. When I was young, I used to be young. So, you know, when I was young, I was at college. I remember having a dream, and the dream was a bit sad. I'm from the Mediterranean, a bit like aliens, so we tend to have this double-sided mindset. I thought that it would be nice when I saw the day of my death approaching to take a space rocket and go outside and simply to say goodbye to the Earth and have this nice picture of the Earth that I only can see in my computer. Then I realized very soon that I couldn't afford the price, so I forgot. And then I think that, as many other people in this room, I thought that staying on the Earth and working for a better world, in my case, through my commitment to the United Nations system, was a good way, of realizing that, fulfilling that dream. I don't know if I'm going to be able to go outside. Who knows? Maybe this project leads us, to some possibilities. But anyway, I think that it's an opportunity, and that's why I'm so excited today. It's an opportunity to really work together, having the space in mind, but knowing that what we want is really to improve the world we live in and providing more opportunities, particularly to those who are more vulnerable. Now, you may ask, going beyond this personal anecdote, what's higher education going to do with this, with all this? Well, I think that if you think seriously, you have to realize that we have over 254 million higher education students around the world. It is an incredible hour of humanity. All part of this grand adventure we call higher education. It is not just about getting a degree and a fancy job, although that would be nice too if it happens for everyone, which is not really the case. It's about shaping the very fabric of our society, molding future leaders, and figuring out what humanity and pluralism look like, not just on Earth, but in the vast expanse of the cosmos. That's really the next frontier. Here's the kicker. Higher education isn't just for the elite few. It's a fundamental human right, and that's what UNESCO claims. Like having access to memes and cat videos. Okay, maybe a bit more, I would say, important than that, but we certainly at the United Nations, we claim that getting connected is the new human right for the 21st century. So seriously, regardless of where you are from, how much money you have, or whether you prefer Star Wars or Star Trek, everyone should have access to higher education. Now, let's talk about SDG 4, the Sustainable Development Goal number 4.7. Now, it's not a new robot from a science fiction movie. It's about acquiring skills for global citizenship. Think of it as leveling up in the game of life, but instead of just getting better weapons, we're getting better at making the world a more just and humane place. And here is where it gets really exciting. We're not just talking about higher education, but about humanity and pluralism too. It's like that old saying, our differences, when embraced, become strengths. In this increasingly interconnected world, pluralism isn't just a nice to have, it's a must have. Universities are like the ultimate melting pots where young people from all walks of life come together to collaborate and innovate. It's like a real life version of the United Nations, but with more textbooks and less formal attire, I would say. Now, let's shine a spotlight on the real VIPs, the youth and students. You are not just the leaders of tomorrow. You are the change makers of today. You are like the protagonist in a sci-fi novel, ready to take on the challenges of inequality and limited access to education. But we know you'll face obstacles like poverty, inequality, limited access, as I mentioned, and particularly not only to connectivity, but also to quality education. And even for those of you with top-notch education, there are still some superpowers that aren't widely taught, like how to turn differences into strengths, how to tell stories that move people to action, and how to unite as one collective force. Speaking of collective force, let's talk about the space, as Nick has put it very rightly. Space exploration used to be the playground of a few nations and elite institutions, but now it's a frontier for all of humanity. As we look to the stars, we need to make sure we are packing our Earth values for the trip: inclusion, collaboration, and mutual respect. We don't want to repeat our Earth mistakes in space, right? Here is a mind-blowing fact. There is only one university entirely dedicated to space studies. That's the International Space University. It's like having only one flavor of ice cream in the whole world. We need to change that. We need to make space education as common as selfies on Instagram. But here's the million-dollar question. How do we make sure that as we reach for the stars, we are not leaving anyone behind on Earth? How do we ensure that the space exploration reflects our collective humanity and isn't just a big boys club with really expensive toys? That's where the UNESCO International Institute for Higher Education, which I lead, and our amazing partners come in. We're here to highlight the intersection between higher education, pluralism, and space exploration. We want to inspire a future where exploring space is as inclusive and collaborative as the educational systems we are building on Earth. And as we dive today into our discussions, let's remember that education and exploration, whether on Earth or in space, are two sides of the same, allow me, cosmic coin. Let's think about how we can empower young people and students, and how higher education can continue to be a beacon of pluralism, equity, and innovation. I would like to express UNESCO's gratitude for all of you being here. I already mentioned Interstellar, so thank you very much. But I know that all of you have made a huge effort to be here today. So I'm looking towards the production that we're going to get through this, in a way, conversation. You are really, if I may say so, quite a constellation of brilliance, and mindsets. Thank you for being here. You are in many respects, you could be, through this partnership, the stars of this educational galaxy. And we couldn't do this without you. So let's get this cosmic party started. Let's dream big, think out of this world. Well, the pun is totally intended. And work towards a future where higher education is as accessible as gravity, where diversity is more celebrated than a successful Mars landing, and where our collective humanity and pluralism guide us as we boldly go where no one has gone before. Now you will realize how old I am. May the force of education be with you.
Thank you so much, Nico Princess, for the very stimulating and inspirational comments already for laying the ground for this very exciting discussion. If I may, I would like to invite our very outstanding UNESCO Charity Ambassador of IESALC University, UNESCO STD for Youth Network, former representative, and the founder of One Generation, Ms. Sofia Zuniga, to lead the first panel on Earth versus Space. What is collective humanity and pluralism? Thank you very much, Lily, and thank you everyone that joined us today. We're going to start the conversation with these amazing speakers. First of all, I'm going to present them. We have Ms. Natalie Souron, Senior Education Manager of Global Center for Pluralism, Ms. Michelle Lucas, Science Educator and former astronaut, Higher Orbits Foundation.
Yeah, pause really quick. Former astronaut instructor. Somehow that was missed. So I have not been to space. Full disclosure. You set that record straight.
Thank you. Mr. Daniel Fox, explorer and artist, future space, and Mr. Darian Steven, Head of Partnership Initiative Partnerships Accelerator, DESA. Thank you very much for joining us today. So let's get started. And the first question is for Natalie. Natalie, can you tell us, please, how do the concepts of collective humanity and pluralism influence global space initiatives? And what lessons can we apply to Earth-based challenges?
Well, thank you so much. I feel very lucky to be with all of you here today. So lucky to be part of this conversation. At the Global Center for Pluralism, the way that we talk about pluralism is to describe it basically as an ethic of respect for diversity and everything that entails. That touches all aspects of human diversity. And when I think about that element and think about, we were talking about the golden record earlier, sent out into space. I think there are echoes of that concern in that project. I see that as things are progressing with Dr. Zhang's work, for example, that maybe there's even more of a view of that pluralism to be in our efforts of communication with space. But I would say that I find interesting that I'm one of the Star Trek fans, and I think that one of the things that strikes me from Star Trek is that it's also a hope for our future, our hope for how we will be in space. And I find it interesting that there are many strands of that pluralism instinct there. We see some of our favorite characters, for those of you who like me, like Star Trek, grappling with what it means to respect diversity in context and try to work through that, and through the metaphor of working with non-human beings, definitely pushing us to think further about those themes in our own lives in here on Earth, and hopefully going into space too. And I think that it's a series that pushes us to remind ourselves that diversity, when we usually think about it, we tend to think about surface level things, what we think we see when we look at each other. But diversity has a lot more to do with our differences in experiences and worldviews and perspectives, and in just like life experiences. And that is where the true strength of the diversity comes in, whether we are here on the planet or elsewhere. And I think that higher education has a special role. As I work in different places in the world, I have been in different places where getting to higher education is often the first time that young people are in contact with people who are very different from themselves in different ways. And I'm not sure that that fact is always really part of the design of how we do higher education. And if we are going to work on complex projects and solve complex problems together, that's definitely something that we need to cultivate very deeply. I think that one of the drivers of pluralism is curiosity, and a caring curiosity, but I would say at times a courageous curiosity too. Going further and being able to stick through the uncomfortable parts and figuring things out together. And that's something that we can cultivate that is good for our relationships as human beings, but isn't that something that we share with the impulse of science too, and any kind of exploration, that curiosity? So it seems to me like a good a connection right there. Pluralism also, of course, has an important fundamental role in terms of peacemaking. I hope that when we explore these elements, that fundamental piece is going to be woven into, no matter how fascinating the science piece of all of this and the technology piece, but how we do all those things at the same time as we think about peacemaking. When we talk about curiosity, when we talk about diversity and pluralism, what we center is human dignity and the inherent worth of each of us, no matter what characteristics or groupings a society might make. So using that general rule, if we look at our work on space endeavors, I think is a good rule to adopt. And I would say also that this pluralism orientation is something that's good for science. And thinking about study done by Richard Freeman from Harvard Economics, and also Wayne Hung from Peking University, who they studied 2.5 million scientific papers over a period of about 20 years, published over a period of 20 years. And they compared, they said most, or many of the scientific teams that write papers are homogeneous in terms of ethnic and language wise, more than one would predict in terms of populations of authors. And they wanted to know, is this something that actually brings a strength in the quality of the papers that are produced? And what they discovered was that papers who had a variety of representation in terms of ethnicity, a variety of representations in terms of places where scientists were doing their work, and a greater variety and length in terms of references. So this is not just tokenism in terms of we're going to choose pick, but also you can see the influence of those different strands of thinking and paths showing up in the reference lists. These are the papers that get more citations. These are the papers that get published in the more prestigious journals and have influence on the way we evolve thinking about things. So it's, when we think about pluralism, it's not a either or, it's a both and, or all together. So I'll leave it at that for now, but lovely to be here with you.
Thank you very much, Natalie. That was so super interesting to also start the conversation. I love what you say about this hope for the future and how this space can be this hope. And also this really idea, what you mentioned about pluralism as the importance of diversity, curiosity, and also the shared experiences or personal experiences. So thank you so much for that. So we'll move on the conversation. And now we're going to pass on to Michelle. And Michelle, we would like to ask you, how can space exploration foster a shared sense of responsibility towards the common good of humanity, particularly among marginalized and underserved communities?
So I think the beauty of space is that it's something we can all see. And that may sound counterintuitive, but I'm known for making a comment. There are two things that all kids get excited about: space and dinosaurs. You can't see a dinosaur everywhere. It's great museums and all of that, but you can go outside and look up and you can see the stars and you can see the moon. And when astronauts go into space, one of the things they talk about is that they get this sense of just how very small we are in the scheme of the world. As you look out, whether it's the overview effect of their opinion of take care of our planet or the looking outwards to realize how vast it is a very unifying concept. And for us here on Earth, while we may not get the privilege of seeing that view yet, I hold out hope also that one day, being able to all look up and realize we all see the same moon, we all see the same stars. That is a very unifying concept. And so when you start to think about the common good of humanity, when you realize your place in space, I love puns just as much as you do. We're going to have fun with this today. That starts to foster that sense of responsibility towards common good. And one of the conversations that I love that we had here is, yes, we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. The piece that frequently gets missed is access. And we took the DEI and we made it idea: inclusion, diversity, equity, and access with higher orbits, because access is the biggest challenge, whether it is higher education or access to the ability to dream bigger. And that may sound like, well, everybody can dream big. Well, it's really hard to dream big when you don't have a good system in place that shows you that there is more out there. And so I think that space exploration is one of those things that it used to be every kid at some point was like, I want to be an astronaut. It's disturbing to me now that more want to be Instagram influencers. I'm so not a fan. But that used to be a dream of many. That is a great way to keep kids dreaming bigger. And so making space more accessible is one of those ways to keep kids dreaming. Now, I will be the person who steps aside from certain elements here of higher education is amazing, and I think it should be accessible to all. we also need to recognize higher education can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And the idea that everyone has to go to college is not necessarily the best way to foster good community, because college is not for everybody. And there are a lot of amazing things happening out there in manufacturing and things of that nature. And so to me, I'm going to also play off of, I'm not trying to take someone else's question that I originally thought was mine, was roles academia and cultural institutions can play is recognizing that there is more than one pathway and opening that pathway for students. Space is a great way to start that conversation. Space touches every aspect of our lives. One of the banes of my existence is when you talk to, I won't say politicians, but we'll say politicians. And they're like, what does space do for me? As they're on their phone with a map. Like, well, let's start with that. Space touches all of our lives. And so when we start to realize the interconnectedness of this planet, when we start to recognize the interconnectedness that happens because we are all spacefaring humans, whether our country has sent people into space or not, and I use R as the collective, obviously the US has, we are all a spacefaring nation from a perspective of we can all go outside, look at the stars, and dream bigger. I hope that answers your question. Okay.
Thank you very, very much, Michelle. I think it was amazing how you started with this of looking at the stars to the different idea we all have of higher education. I think that's really profound. And the big question of how much can we go forward, right? And how bigger can we dream of for this, ensure everyone have access and all the limitless possibilities for space. Thank you very much. Now we will move on to our next speaker, which is Daniel. And Daniel would like to ask you, what roles can academia and cultural institutions play in promoting pluralism in space-related initiatives?
Thank you. Thank you, first of all. Big thank you, Nick, for inviting me and joining, and pretty honored to be here. In relation to Star Trek, I've never got over the spandex uniform. It was, the idea of a future like that for me was a little bit off. But before I go on with the academia, the couple notes. First of all, diversity is a strategy in nature to build resilience. That's not something that we have invented. It's actually just in our DNA, right? From our immune system to every other system, diversity is really important for survival and making sure that we have different strategies to face unforeseen challenges, even from our immune system. And so we recognize now that we need to bring a lot more people to the table so that we can face the future. But to go back to space, we know space more as a destination, and then there's a technology story of space. There's a science story of space, but ultimately it's a life story. It's a human story. Whatever is the human experience right now will just going to be expanded a little bit, and everything that forms our society here will be taken over there. But what these new frontiers offer is always an opportunity to do better. We will make mistakes, and we have to accept that. They will not be perfect. But the last time that we had such an opportunity was America. America is the result of a vision when Europe was in trouble. It was not the best of places. It was so undesirable that people were willing to get into a ship, cross an ocean, and then cross a continent only for the opportunity to start better, right? And usually, who does it resonate to? The unwanted or the ones who don't see an opportunity. So now we look at space and we look at that blank canvas. Like the kids that leave the nest, they want to do better than their parents, but they need to go out and they need to make their own lives. So space, beyond the technology and the science, is that new frontier, that new canvas that allows us to go and say, learn from the past and do things better. Now, from the academia point of view, it's ground zero, right? It's that place where you have all this energy from individuals that have a curiosity, that have a desire to shape the future. So there's a huge responsibility in shaping that narrative. But at the same time, it can be also dangerous, because if you don't give the good skills, then you're not helping yourself in the future. What is important, I think, from the academia is really to bring back the notions of dynamic skills, that we're not educating people to be in a box, because we don't even know what the box is going to be out there. So dynamic skills are super important, so that, the shaping the curiosity that they're going to have. But I think that one of the things that in my work we're trying to do as much as possible is, because right now there's such a negative narrative of us moving forward. We're a bad species. We've done bad. We've messed up this planet. Now we're going to go and mess up, other places. So let's go back into the past as if there's a magical place to be. There's no magical place to be in the past, right? So the idea is not to do less, but how can we do more, but better? How can we bring back a sense of pride in figuring out solutions and moving forward, so that we can inspire the new generation? I work with children. I do mentoring. When you keep telling people that they're bad, they will end up becoming the exact thing that you don't want them to be. And this is what we've been doing about our society. We've been telling ourselves we're a bad species, we do bad things. And for a lot of people, all they care about is, how can I put food on the table? So from this new generation that's going to be building, right, there are millions of stories that are yet to be written that are going to be in space now above. So how can we give them an inspired message that will make them to move forward and find solutions, as opposed to creating a sense of guilt and anxiety because it's too late and so forth. So that's my answer.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I think that was very inspirational. You touched upon these future generations, which is very important. And here it appears also, again, the key role of higher education in this huge opportunity that Natalie also mentions, this hope for the future, and the opportunity, as you mentioned, it is how we can make the most of that. Because as usually, we cannot go back to the past and change things. How we can think now, we can do the best with this opportunity moving forward for us and future generations as well, for these million stories to be written. Thank you very much. And now, last but not least, we will move forward to Darian. And I'd like to ask you, Darian, how we can promote pluralism and systematically foster multi-stakeholder collaboration.
Thanks so much. It's a huge pleasure to be here today. I'm Darian Stibbe. I'm director of something called the Partnering Initiative, and we're an international NGO that for the last 21 years has been trying to drive effective multi-stakeholder collaboration, particularly bringing together governments and business and the UN and countries to work effectively towards realizing we all want the same thing. We all want prosperous economies. We all want prosperous societies. We all want a prosperous environment. In fact, I did used to be a scientist working for NASA. I did used to be a rocket scientist, but I gave it up to do something a bit harder, which is to try to make these partnerships work. Now, normally I'm not in a room full of NASA scientists when I make that joke. So, thank you for inviting me. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the work or some of the results of the work that we've done with UNDESA. So we have a program called the Partnership Accelerator, which is really about saying, how do we build up the skills and capabilities in country from all sides to be able to partner effectively? And one of the things, and we've developed all sorts of guidance and tools, etc., that you could happily find on the website. But I'm going to talk about what the challenge and what is it that makes these collaborations work. And I'm going to pick up the first element of it is this point of some sort of clear common vision. And this comes from even as simply as being able to look up the sky and see the same moon. Space is absolutely fascinating, exactly in the way that we've already heard so eloquently, that it is something that everybody experiences and in a sense everybody shares. And therefore, they are all stakeholders, and there is a potential for people then to think and believe that they can work together. But the challenge is we live in a completely unequitable world, that actually, if we want people genuinely, if we want that diversity, we have to make that happen. It's not going to happen unless the way we work at the moment in our current system, where, of course, the richest nations are the ones that now are the ones who are able and has the power and the money to be able to explore space. We have corporations, the risk of the powerful, the rich corporations being the ones to be able to go and exploit natural resources in space. And unless we have proper governance, unless countries come together to really decide what do we want collectively to see how we share governance in space, we will have a race, a competitive race in space, and that will be at the expense of all humanity. So governments here, and therefore the people pushing their governments, have a massive role to play, because then that opens up the field for collaboration. If we're all part of it, we feel like we can all be part of the solutions, the exploration, the opening our minds as well as our technologies to space, then we can develop these collaborations. Now, what do we need? So for collaborations to work, we need to have the shared vision that what we're trying to achieve together will create value for all of us. There's enough alignment that will create value for all of us. The second thing is really important is about the quality of the relationship, the trust between the different parties. And we live at a time when actually trust across societal sectors, but also trust across governments is really a low ebb. And we have to work on this, but we can think of it in two ways. One is, there isn't enough trust, let's just not bother trying. Or we think about it the other way, a much more positive way, which is, let's start trying to work together in small ways. And as we work together, we will actually begin to build that trust, to demonstrate our trustworthiness ourselves, to try to build equity with other countries too. So we need that level of trust. And we do need that equity, that co-creation. And too often partnerships are in name only, and the more powerful will still be the ones making the decisions. We need to shift that and change the way that these partnerships are run and decisions are made to actually bring in all views. We heard how diversity is actually what can then create much better outcomes. And I think Francesc said our differences, when embraced, are our strengths. Which is absolutely true. But it's bloody difficult when you've got such differences. Go back to the next thing here. Organizations have different organizational cultures. And when they come together, sometimes they clash. But they almost always clash when you work really closely. Even with your partners and spouses, sometimes, you're working so closely, you get friction because you do washing up one way and they do washing up another way, and you get annoyed with each other, whatever. Imagine organizations that work in very different ways. And this happens even within NASA. You must know the story of a Mars probe that was lost because I think it was JPL was using the metric system, whereas Lockheed Martin was using the imperial system. They passed over to it, guess what? Big probe explodes. That's just a part of organizational cultures. Happened twice, by the way. I mean, one time, yes, you get it, but like twice, that's crazy. Which also shows you how difficult it is to get out of our cultures. So that's what the other thing we need to do. We need to be able to think outside our own cultures. We think that, the way that we work, what we do is completely normal. That's how things are. And everything you do is weird. How you do things, that's strange. That's really strange. And we just need to get over ourselves and a bit of humility to realize actually we do things differently. It's not necessarily right or necessarily wrong. And it's about embracing it, understanding it, and work and talking through the challenges and the differences that we are able to help to make these collaborations work. Now, the challenge with partnerships is that everyone thinks they can do it. And it's true. On a day-to-day basis, we build up good relationships, but we tend to build up good relationships with people that are similar to ourselves, who think in similar sort of ways. And we're not necessarily actually exploiting that difference. So we need, in order for this collaboration to work scale, we are genuinely going to scale up collaboration. We need a few things. We need people to have the professional partnering competencies that will need it. And that's everything from a mindset for collaboration, which includes humility that don't have all the answers and a desire to work with others in order to come up with better solutions. We need that understanding of others and being able to put ourselves in others' shoes and understand what makes them tick, how they work and operate, the language that they use, whether they're using metric or imperial systems, whatever it may be. We need the skills, the human relationship building skills, being able to build trust, be able to have a discussion, which is a really positive, reinforcing discussion, value maximization, negotiation, we call it. Not what can I get out of this, but how can we collectively get the most for all? And we need the technical knowledge of partnerships. What are the building blocks of a good partnership? What goes into a partnering agreement? What's a good governance structure look like? So we need all of those skills as individuals. But that's not enough. Our organizations are not set up to partner. Our organizations need to change. They need to become what we call fit for partnering in order that they are able to really optimize collaboration, whether that's the leadership and strategy or the internal systems and processes, the skills involved, but really importantly, the culture of the organization. We work with most major UN organizations, a lot of multinational companies, big foundations, big international NGOs. They all suffer the same thing. They all think they're almost always the powerful one, and they think they're great partners. They talk to their partners, and their partners don't agree at all. I'm not great partners. When you do an analysis, you can see exactly why that is and what the internal challenges. So you have individuals really wanting to make partnerships happen, and that they just destroyed by our institutions, stops it from working. So we need to change our institutions and invest in institutions to become fit for partnering. And then finally, we need partnerships themselves, when you develop them, to be set up to good practice standards. Too many partnerships are just started, you go into them, and guess what? They're not really working as well as they could. Sometimes they deliver less than some of the parts. So in total, we need to invest in the whole system, the whole ecosystem, to ensure that we can create partnerships wherever we can create added value and really ensure that 1 + 1 always equals 5.
Thank you very much, Darian. I think it was really interesting, this idea of thinking of governance into space, because I haven't heard many people talking about this, and it's important to start now with these questions to pave the field for collaboration, as you said, but also to pay to work this through from now on, and not when the time is we are already building these new worlds in space. Thank you very much for all the speakers for your participation, your contributions. I think it's all clicking together and linking, because I want to recall what Nick said at the beginning. We're a collective species, and that's what we've been discussing today. This idea of one humanity, the importance of diversity, even when we are one humanity, the importance of diversity, and the importance to now create things that we want to work on in the space, how we envision that space, how we envision that society, that collaboration, that governance over there, and the key role that higher education has in this sense, how we foster dynamic skills, how we work in this competence to foster collaboration, and how education is space to do that. In the sense of the education we are receiving, the students, the future generations, but also, as you mentioned at the beginning, how universities are a space where we encounter with different people, different than us, with different opinions. So thank you very much for all your amazing contributions.
So, in that, if I may, I would like to invite Miss Maria Joia Figueras Ranch from SDSN Portugal to discuss how we can encourage more youth-led initiatives in space science and STEM field to foster a diverse and inclusive future for space exploration. Maria, very honored to have you here. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for this invitation. I feel very honored. In my beginning, I would like very much to link with what Darian said, because I have been since 35 years working with partnerships. So this has been my whole life. It has been really in many different countries in Europe, building pacts for social inclusion, for employment, for whatever. but really to bring multi-stakeholders partnerships to work for a common good, for a common vision. And this brings us to the common goods and the need of a global governance for the common goods, because this is why we are having the world like it is. It's because there is not a global governance that really takes care about what is a common good. So they are destroying everything and nobody can do anything. And I call here the policy brief of the Secretary General about UN 2.0, that is the reform of the United Nations system, exactly to respond to this need of having a global governance in the world that we have now, that is not anymore the world of the post-war, the Second World War. So I liked very much, and I think that it's not also by chance that when we see this framework of development that represents all the sustainable development goals nowadays and the Agenda 2030, then SDG number 17 is called partnership. It's called really to work together for this common good. So I find I could not agree more with you that we need trust, to build trust, and we need a common work for the common good. And this brings us to the space that is also a common good, yeah, and how we deal with space, and that we need to transform the way we see the different areas and the common goods, the citizenship education, as you said, and this makes me say that in SDSC in Portugal, that is a baby still, because we were launched in the 2nd November last year. But we had a very big conference in June with 750 registrations from all the world, because we have all the networks of SDSN. And the SDSN network is a network of specially knowledge producers that partner with knowledge users. So to bring universities and researchers to apply their knowledge and not to stay only in this ivory tower that sometimes it's so nice to live within. So, and we have selected 3 of the policy briefs of Guterres, exactly to discuss in these countries. One was transforming education. The other one, the meaningful involvement of youth in policy making and decision making. And the other one, all these bits was separate beyond GDP, how we classify development nowadays. That is fantastic when I see that when they cut trees in Amazon, the people of Brazil is growing. It's fantastic. What they don't say that we all die because there is a lot of carbon in the air, but this does not matter. The peat grows. This is fantastic. So, to do this, we have built up 3 think tanks, one for each one of these teams, and multi-stakeholder think tanks, not only the universities, but other actors, and a lot of youth, a lot of young people. And in this group of youth involvement was only youth. So the moderator was the oldest and was 40 years old. So all the others were really young people. And the conclusions of this work, they were the input for the conference, and afterwards it was produced a document for each one of the teams that had some conclusions. And I can deliver this to anyone that is interested, and even the tape of you have already, of the 2 days of the conference. So if someone is interested, just contact me. You have all my contacts, and we'll be delighted to do that, because we exploit always ways of cooperation. So please feel free to do that. And these conclusions were very interesting to us, because what we really noticed was that we are trying to respond to the new challenges of a new world and with different generations that have different values with the very same education system that we have since the 20th century. And then we are very surprised that young people are not interested, or that they lose interest, or that they don't have the results we expect they have. Of course, because they feel, and this was clearly in these conclusions, they feel that the content is not anymore adequate. The way the content is delivered is even less adequate, and that they would like to have something that is more, that they can really apply more and see clearly and apply to the reality. So this is really the need of a transformation in the education system. And to give an example to finish, to give an example, the organization in which I work, that is the biggest engineering and product center in Portugal, has around 500 engineers working and works in 5 pillars. One of them is space, aeronautics, mobility, and the ocean. And this is one of the hosts of the SDFC in Portugal. The other one is the University Nova in Lisbon. And we have built since 5 years. In the end of the scholar year, we invite 15 young people, the best 10 secondary pupils, and the 10 best the first 3 years of university. We bring them to SEA, and during 2 weeks for the pupils and 1 month for the university youngsters, they have a program, and that is about space. Yeah. So how can space technologies and space knowledge help the planet? And there are different challenges. They can choose what they have 4 modules with people from different parts of the world that go there in these modules to bring them inputs. And then they decide what they want to do, which challenge they want to take. For instance, this year, one of the groups has designed a moon station. Yeah. So, and the prototype, they come from the ideation until the prototype. And so each group had a different project. You saw the videos already. So they are really fascinated with this because it's a different way of learning, and they feel that they are producing something, and they get the knowledge, but then they produce something with this knowledge, and they are very happy about this. And as I say, this is a way of bringing the space technology and the space idea in a way that fascinates the young people and not bores them. Because this is the problem of our system, is that even fantastic shapes, like I also wanted to be an astronaut, by the way. So all these fantastic ideas that we have when and we come to the school, and most of the time they eat our ideas. Yeah, they bring us in these tunnels, and that everything has to be like that. And our creativity, our way of expressing something is killed. And so I think that this is an important issue, because even if you want the young people to keep fascinated by space after the education system, we need also to change this to keep these enthusiasms. So thank you so much for your attention. And I'm sorry that I have to leave, but as I say, I will be delighted to be in contact with anyone. Thank you so much.
Now we invite Nick, who will be leading the second panel on healthcare space education, powerfully encourage you in understanding partnership and collaboration. Wonderful transition, bridging from our first panel and the intervention district. Of course, yours, Nick, on your panel.
Amazing. Thank you, everybody, again. Thank you to people joining this panel as well. I think if we looked at the question, how can space education powerfully encourage youth in understanding partnerships and collaboration? We really have to think about, to get to space and to do things in space, it's almost impossible. It is an impossible endeavor to do alone. So it's not, if it is better to do it with collaboration, it is essential to do it with collaboration. So we have some of my favorite and also incredible, people within the space industry. So, Mr. Jonathan Jiang, who's a scientist at NASA Jet Propulsion Lab. If anybody has been to NASA, Jet Propulsion Lab is quite a special thing. Also at Caltech, Ms. Ideal Gonzalez Saracho, also scientist, also Caltech, NASA ambassador. Ms. Janet Ivy Densing, science and space educator, CEO of Janet's Planets, NASA ambassador. David Brothers, Institute of Astronomical Sciences, an astronaut candidate. I did forget citizens of the solar system for Jonathan as well. So we're gonna start off, Jonathan, maybe if we could start with you.
Sure.
How can space education promote partnerships, do you think, in higher education?
Okay, thank you very much, Nick, for inviting me here. And I would think over the past 3.5 billion years, there's more than 100 million species have appeared on the Earth. We are the only one who invented our way into the space. So over the next 30 to 50 years, for sure, we are going to build base on the moon. The astronaut is going to land on Mars. We are going to start to build a city, maybe on the Mars as well. And that said, our future depends on our younger generations. They are going to manage our future, to define our future. So go back to your question, how space and education promote partnership and over this endeavor. And I would think, first of all, space exploration and space education is cross-discipline. So that means the engineering and biology and economics has to work together. Okay. So this is the cross-discipline, and to really encourage the teamwork. Okay. To solve the world scale and problems on that. The second, international and the space education really encourages universities worldwide to work together, to share the resources, to solve the world problems, issues for the space education. And so that we really unite the students, unite the faculty members around the world to do that, to share the resources, and to share the project. So in the process, the space education really promotes the partnerships in different fields and different universities around the globe. So this is the way what I'm thinking at. So overall, space education really creates a shared vision for the humanity. It's not just for one university and, one student or faculties and one dreams. It put many, many dreams together. So that's the space education is going to do, because space belongs to all citizens around the Earth. Thank you very much. That's my question. Yeah, my answer.
Thanks. And Jonathan, when we met first time, I think 2 years ago, I remember in our third meeting, you had mentioned sort of the importance of any work that we do, and the importance of being able to pass that on to future generations, and the importance of the work we're doing now being for future generations.
Right.
Is it 120 academic papers that you've written?
More than 300.
300.
300. Okay, thanks very much. Yes. Thank you.
I did. How can space education be integrated into youth curricula to inspire global collaboration and partnerships?
Thank you. I want to focus on the education part. Not everybody has access to education, and that's my parents. They had very limited education even coming to this country. And this is like a full circle moment for me, because my father used to work at the UN, and he was told to be discreet, quiet, and unseen, because he worked on
on the elevators. And it's kind of cool that I'm being seen, heard, and not the street. So I want to start on how that we can inspire the next global collaboration, how to integrate it to the curricula. And the heart of the answer is citizen science. So space is not just a frontier, the shared opportunity for all of us to advance as one humanity. But to truly unlock the potential of space exploration, we must engage and empower and acknowledge the diverse, innovative thinkers, which is our future world changers. So we were talking about previously about getting access. So I have created, but I'm not the only one. There's so many out there. So one way is citizen science. So I have my own citizen science project that is globally used. I actually provide them with all the resources I have so I could give. And what I've noticed, and I've been throughout the world, and I noticed this type of experiential, hands-on learning can inspire the students all across the world. And whether they are studying climate change using the soil, or they're collaborating on solutions on how to protect our ecosystem, these students are just not learning science. They're learning that they belong in the scientific community. And they're contributing to something bigger than themselves. They understand the power of collaboration across all borders, all disciplines, all cultures. And I think that's the key here. And that mutual, I think there was someone here, that once there is a cultural norm of understanding, here's how we're going to collaborate. So that's why there's SI units, just to make it that. So, always use standardized units, but that's the important part. Now, incorporating citizen science into space education allows us to engage students globally, particularly of the underserved and marginalized communities. So just looking at the data, either what UNESCO provides, less than 2% Latinas in STEM are currently present in the United States. Yo soy puertorriqueña. Yo soy boricua. And then globally, females are actually 30% are researchers. That's it. So how can we provide access? So one way is by participating, catching the kids very young, by participating in real world projects, real science projects. There's Zooniverse. It's a free access so they could study the world. They could study the exoplanets, even potentially identify one. They could even name it, or working on soil science. They can actually make a change. Students are working together regardless where they are in the world. So I know personally that I have students around the world emailing each other saying, hey, did you find this at this latitude? Because you're a similar latitude that I am. And there is, thank God, technology. There is translation. And another cool point is that they will find interventions. They will try to solve really pressing challenges that we face together on this planet and even beyond into space. Now I want to go even deeper. Citizen Science Project also bring in cultural relevant learning, integrating indigenous knowledge and diverse perspectives. This actually helps students understand global interdependence of ecosystems, nations, and economies, which was mentioned many, many times, and I love hearing it over and over again. Space science projects, especially those connected to climate or soil health, actually emphasizes interconnectedness, as they show students that the challenges of space exploration, like the challenges that we currently have with climate change, are global problems that require global solutions. Now, let's talk about partnerships. Citizen science also teaches that diverse perspective fuel innovation. Whether you're studying space or soil, solutions to the world's biggest problems come when we cross borders and we come together through cultures and disciplines and to discuss. So Scott Page, which is a social scientist, and he actually studies about diversity in teams and how to analyze group dynamics and making decisions. He noticed that on diversity, I just want to make sure I get this worded properly, that has proven that diverse teams are better problem solvers, especially complex problems. And space education offers a perfect platform to foster this type of collaboration early on. Now, it is important that we actually establish more and more collaborative STEAM programs, because it will make at least 60% more students to pursue STEM, pursue social justice.
By engaging in multinational citizen science projects, students will learn critical teamwork skills that prepare them for STEM and space research careers. They're learning that the best solutions come when we work together. I know it sounds very Pollyanna-ish, but it's true because I've seen it firsthand, especially with diverse learners who are neurodivergent and they're not able to communicate the same needs, but they have the same goal as becoming an astronaut, because I'm one of those. Manifesting. But once they realize they have a common goal, they find a way to communicate. There is the patience. They understand, okay, you're not able to communicate verbally, so let's write it down. Because I had students who were mute. So now let's get into the facts. So according to the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, multicultural learning environments increase innovation capacity. According to the International Partnership of Space Education, it is actually shown that between schools and space agencies or industries, that STEM engagement actually increased by 25%. So, and I know personally that with the soil science, and I'm going into my schools in the South Bronx to Africa, to Pittsburgh, to up at North and Svalbard. I've been places. Portugal. They demonstrated that I actually had kids really actively involved. They're saying they didn't realize that while understanding the soil, how it interacts with the climate is pretty powerful. And if we take that to space and they actually find a way to have life persist in order for us to persist, it could come right back to Earth. So that's the beauty. So what are some of the solutions? Because I can never answer a question with some possible solutions. So I really believe that if we begin, and this is the great start, to build multinational citizen science projects into our curricula, educators, teachers, administrators, especially in the U.S., please lean into discomfort and get away from this standardized testing and really allow the students to understand you could solve this real world problems. Yes, meet the milestones, but release the reins. We don't have to test multiple choice. Allow the teachers trust the professionals that are in the classrooms and also engage with the professionals in the field. I also want to add, hope and expand global initiatives like NASA Artemis program. And hopefully they could encourage, create and encourage students and educators to basically create citizen science projects that are based upon the access to the Artemis program. What a great way to inspire students into the future, that knowing that they can actually solve real world problems together globally, and that the differences is just the part, you know? And I will leave it there. I guess that's
I mean, that's incredible. I think just to start off with belonging and the story of getting here. And I think that, the world is changing in incredible ways, from growing up in apartheid South Africa, seeing the changes of what it means for people to see themselves in other people has been sort of transformative, but we still have a long way to go. We still have a lot of things to do. I think coming back to this event and to sort of what this really is this is an idea to create something which is a future collaboration of projects that's and I think the one of the ideas initially for the event as well is like, let's bring together some of the most exciting scientists, academics, and people in space, and let's put them together with people in education and people in social development. Let's see ideas that we can come up with, but then also let's really look at some actionable things going forward over the next years. And I think citizen science is just a really incredible, important part of that. Janet, what innovation strategies can be employed to make space education more accessible to understand underserved communities, and especially in the global South?
So thank you very much. It is a privilege to be in the room with all of you. Let me first say that I think that the success in higher education and space education starts in kindergarten, because I am very much like a K through 12, like space educator, but it's like, I think space education is a global right. But the first and foremost strategy that can be employed to make space education more accessible to what I like to call untapped communities, especially the global South,
is intentionality. It is intentionality in invitation. It is intentionality in access. It is intentionality in exposure. I'll give you an example. We have done the Explore Mars Innovation Challenge now for 2 years. And so some brilliant folks, over half of the entries came from Mexico and Colombia through the amazing efforts of Javier Montiel and Luisa Hernandez. And this wasn't just like a random invitation. We were very purposeful. Javier is leading the way in space education in South America. But here was what was made it amazing. After we had the first year, we had this kind of Zoom and we talked about it. And what Louisa shared with tears in her eyes and in her voice said, my students cared less about the competition, more about participation, because for the first time ever, being invited to the conversation, to the table, all of a sudden they felt relevant, like they had a voice in the space industry. And they finished as semifinalists. So they were semifinalists. They didn't win the whole kit and caboodle, but they had radio interviews. They had TV interviews. They felt like rock stars. And we sent them the simplest of Canvas certificates, which they had printed out and were hanging on their walls. So I feel like, again, I love what Michelle said earlier. It is access and exposure, and whether that is in the global South, whether that is in rural America, wherever that may be, we've got to focus on localizing space education to fit the needs and context of these communities. We don't all communicate the same, much like the other gentleman was saying. It's like we need to come to the table with open arms and hold space for everybody's differences, because we know that the diversity of everything is critical, and diverse perspectives provide incredible innovation. And I want to leverage some low-cost, scalable digital platforms, because that can democratize access to space education. If we have availability of those digital platforms, then anybody can play. And then provide accessible, high-quality professional development for teachers, as well as access to open educational resources, and that can build their local capacity to deliver space education sustainably. And how do we start all of this? I think we start by showing up and asking, how can we help? It is up to every good person, every good human in this room, like Mr. Rogers said, when times are tough, look for the helpers. It is a call out to all of us to be the helpers. And so we must be saying to our neighbors, wherever they are in the globe, how can we help? And it's about more than just opening doors. It's about stepping up and actively supporting these young leaders as they define the future. Here's my very favorite thing. I am for the student above all. When we challenge young people to come up with solutions to real world space and engineering problems that don't yet have answers, we're telling them we believe in your capacity to lead. We respect your genius, and we expect you to be more than capable and up to the task. And it's our job to light that fire of curiosity and give them the freedom to chase down the answers they seek. But our support can't be fleeting. If we're serious about really making this a global right and global governance, and having space education be accessible to all, it is up to us to make long-term sustained investments in their potential. And what that means is our next small step in giant leap. See what I did there? And creating programs that don't just culminate in these one-off events, but provide access to knowledge, resources, and networks that accompany them throughout their educational journey, kindergarten through however far you want to go. Because when we offer and foster international partnerships and mentorship programs, we bridge the gap between aspiration and opportunity. I don't think there's one of us in here. I played astronaut on the playground with my friend Carol, who had walkie-talkies. Live long and prosper. It was So students of today are already change making and world changers. They're already breaking the barriers of race, religion, gender identity, and ability, ensuring that space exploration becomes a reflection of diversity of humanity. And so I believe so wholeheartedly in the future with this generation. And so I think our model, and this is my call out to all good humans and the helpers everywhere, is that if we want global participation for every region in the world, we must show up and we must stand up for their ideas. We need to stand by their side. We need to supply access and mentorship, and we need sustained investment in their success for the long haul. And then we celebrate and cheer them on and then rinse and repeat. And we continually do that. Let's all remember that rockets roar into space using two forms of fuel. One is the liquid in the rocket's tanks. The other is the fuel in the human heart. Space education is an international right, and it is an invitation to dare audaciously together.
I can literally feel my heart refueling. Thank you so much. And I love the idea of intentionality at the beginning as well. And the idea of participation and helping as well. I think coming into this event, with all the planning, you must have sent me at least 10 or 12 messages over the last couple of months going, how can I help? What can I do? I'm here now. It's an incredible thing to work with somebody as well who, is just so prepared to help. And I think it is really a good example because that extends out into institutions, into different areas of the world.
I was up early this morning, Zooming with 7 9-year-old girls in Pakistan who all want to be in astronomy and in astrophysics. And so again, 9-year-olds, right? They're third graders, but it's like I am prepping higher education when I am preparing these 9 and 10-year-olds for a future and how they see themselves in space. So yeah.
Amazing.
And usually I say yes, because I just figure you never know what's going to happen.
And I think, if you, from a global South perspective, I'm very lucky enough to travel around a lot of Africa, and I've lived in Nigeria and lived in Kenya. And there's just this incredible thing that's happening across, Africa in particular, where you'll walk into an office and you can just see that sort of like 25 to 35-year-old youth is just like incredibly vibrant and incredibly engaging and incredibly intentional. And it's a really exciting time. Okay. David, how can we encourage more youth-led initiatives in space science, STEM fields to foster a diverse and inclusive future for space exploration?
Nick, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity and thank the ladies. You guys have, put me in a difficult position with your enthusiasm, but you lead me into Nick's question throughout the morning. Diversity and teams, international teams have been a key concept into capturing youth initiative to increase space exploration and creativity. So I think that is very important. Like you said, Janet, capturing them young and then creating an inclusive environment to where they feel that they are a part and not, like Ideal said, being part of the system, coming up in a system where you're not heard or understood. But to go back to the question, I think that creating educational access to the underrepresented and creating mentor programs that leverage technology and virtual engagement. Those will be keys to helping teams create initiatives. And I'll give you an example. We could create online communities where youth can collaborate with each other and collaborate with other professionals in the field. And that gives them an idea of inclusivity. And I think that is important. Another key to that also is we must also give youth the ability and the opportunity to collaborate and network. All of us here, I work with Ideal. Jan and I met you before. We all network, and we must give youth the opportunity to collaborate and network. And this can be done. We can have host events where youth can lead conferences, lead events, lead competitions, where youth can showcase projects with the help of
industry professionals and mentors to help them feel like they are part of the new space age. Throughout this, this meeting we have had today, I've heard diversity, multinationalism, citizen science, which is the concept that I brought up in. I think all of these are key elements to providing the youth the confidence and the vigor to want to pursue space exploration.
Thank you so much, David. Hey, look at Ashley, man.
Okay.
I think if we looked at, and thank you, I think that the idea of access is incredibly important, especially from a global perspective, and what are the ways to maybe minimize the gaps in that access. And I think, when it comes to technology, that has been probably one of the largest shifts. I was telling friends earlier today, I was living in Nigeria at a time where pre the cell phone, basically you had 120 million people that if they weren't sitting in the same room with each other, they basically weren't able to communicate. There was no landline systems, and there was also no postal service. And then over a period of 12 years, you went from that to 96% penetration of mobile services. And you had a whole country just talking to each other. And somebody can, might go to school and they're lacking access in terms of books. But if they have Wi-Fi, or if they have an internet connection, and most people do have an internet connection with a smartphone, they can go online and they can go, how do I build a car, or how do I do these things? And there is this real sort of transformational thing that's happening. I think just to close, does anybody have any themes for them that kind of came up as things that, that we could see as actionable points as well?
I really like David's idea of why aren't we taking some of the challenges that you have at JPL, like these real things, the Mars sample return? Why are we not taking it straight to the kids and saying, how would you solve this problem? Because we know there's a potential budget issue. We know that there's other kinds of things to consider. So when you're talking about having those student-led conferences, one of the things we did years ago at National Space Society, I had experts in the room, and then kids go around and just do almost like it was speed networking. Mm-hmm. But it's I think that one of the most powerful things we could do is Explore Mars does their Achieving Mars report, is on one side have the Clyde Neals and all of the, awesome bright minds like you all. And then on the opposite side, have students from each and every kind of elementary, middle, high school, and college, and then have them work together across systems, across the globe in solving this. And it would be so interesting to see the ideas that might populate.
Yeah. And when
we do have a kids to work there. So the engineer discuss our project, kids sitting around watching. This is a wonderful idea for kids to learn, I think.
Yeah, but I also want to be mindful of this. That is so true. Definitely having real world challenges and bring in the new brains. Oh, forget about absolutely. But I also want to make sure that the language is there. So I remember as Dr. Shabalala from South Africa, he was saying that there's already a limited access because of language. You need to know English or something just to even step in the door. So really making that effort to have some type of bilingual system and culturally acknowledging where the culture is, what is the language, and really invest for them to know, you belong here. We just have to figure out a better way to communicate. And I don't want you to come to me. I come to you. Exactly what you said, because we want to respect every point of humanity, because it is a fact that we are in the space age. It is a fact that humans are going to be living up in space and beyond our solar system. What will be our human culture? Mm-hmm. And no one should be excluded, because due to our planet right now, all of our diversity is what helps this planet grow and die at the same time. But we could do better. And what a great way to have a new platform, like a new start in space, which can be brought back to Earth, but we cannot forget where we came from.
Thank you. It does also remind me, this little nugget is that we were probably the last generation that looks at a moon that doesn't have permanent base of people there. So think about space, the International Space Station. There's always people in space right now. And we are the last generation that looks at the moon. As long as we don't totally destroy ourselves as a species, there will always be people on the moon. Amazing. Thank you. Yeah, thanks very much.
Well, thank you so much, Nick, Jonathan, Adele, Jenny, and David. It's very, very interesting and very humble with the concluding remark on the message of hope and the message to do more. Let's move on to our next panel, which will be themed under effective youth-led initiatives and role of higher education in collective humanity and pluralism. And once again, very humbled to be learning not only from our very experienced space scientist, a space educator, but also channeling the conversation into our intergenerational space on how we collectively work to support with the humanity and pluralism initiative on this planet led by our young people. So with that said, maybe if I may, I would like to first invite Mr. Yusuke Nagi, the founder and executive director of Accept International and a very proud member of UNESCO IESALC Vivo Network. Yes. So Yusuke, how do you consider higher education institutions as a driver to support youth leadership and contribute to promoting pluralism on a global scale?
Well, thank you very much. And I'm really glad to be here today. And actually, also a bit surprised to be here today because I'm no scientist. And I'm totally I'm always and usually working in literary frontline in Somalia, Yemen, and something like that, for de-radicalization and the reintegration support for the disengaged combatants. But that's fine. It's great honor to be here. And also I'm really excited to explore new way of thinking and any kind of collaboration. So, I think obviously we live in a time when the challenges faced by our world, inequality, of the conflict, terrorism, and the environment crisis, call for fresh, innovative perspective that push the boundaries of traditional thinking. So nowhere is this more evident than in the youth of today, particularly young people who have been marginalized, who have been overlooked. So you associated with non-state groups. So that is a particularly, left out. So they cannot come to New York, of course. They cannot go to Geneva. No, it's impossible. They cannot, get passport. They cannot go out from their country. And some of the people cannot go get access to the internet. So, but they are there. And most of them are just young generations. So the theme of this event, our collective humanity, is a powerful reminder that regardless of our background, we share a common bond as humans. And we must use this understanding to tackle the global challenges we face. And I believe that higher education have a unique role to play here, not just equipping young people with knowledge and skills, but opening their minds to new possibilities, new way of thinking. And in my experience working with disengaged combatants from non-state armed groups, sometimes so-called terrorist organization, designated one by New York, by the way, one profound realization has emerged. These young individuals are often seen only through the lens of their past actions, but in reality, they possess immense potential to become unique agents of peace. This shift in perspective from seeing them as a threat to recognizing their unique capacity for transformation is a key to realizing a more pluralistic world. Higher education must expand beyond traditional culture to include programs that empower such youth to reap incentives in peace building. So let me show one example that stands out. A former member of a non-state armed group in Somalia Al-Shabaab. It's one of the Al-Qaeda-related organization, really famous and super active one, so-called designated terrorist organization, who once saw violence as the only option. Now, with rehabilitation and reintegration programs for others like him in a prison together with us, he has become an advocate for education and peace, drawing from his own experience in such groups before. His journey showed the power of recognizing that humanity in everywhere, no matter how lost they may seem, and offering them a path forward. If we are serious about fostering collective humanity, we must ensure that higher education is accessible to all, particularly those who have been left behind, like him and like them. This means creating opportunities not just for basic education, but for advanced education that can unlock the untapped potential within these individuals. This approach enables marginalized young people to break free from the cycle of violence, cycle of hatred, especially in the battlefield, and become innovators in conflict resolution and peace building. As we look to the future, we must also address the barriers that prevent marginalized young people from accessing education, especially higher education and leadership opportunities. So, for example, right, in a deradicalization or any kind of DDR programs or reintegration project for former combatants, most of people are just talking about basic education because they cannot read and they cannot write, and also like very basic vocational training. That's all. But do they have an idea? And do they have a hope? And do they have dreams? So to realize such things, more advanced education, like led by the higher educational institutions, is really, really important. And these barriers are not just financial or structural, but often rooted in how we perceive them. So higher education institutions have a duty, I think, to foster pluralism, to encourage diversity of thought, and to welcome students from all walks of life, including those with the most unconventional backgrounds. So what can higher education do now? It must be a platform for radical empathy and new ideas. It should be the place where young readers are encouraged to collaborate with others globally, tackling the world's most pressing issues. Be through maybe space exploration, climate change, or peace initiatives. By equipping these young readers with both knowledge and a global perspective and a new perspective of three, higher education can nurture a new generation that advance the idea of a collective humanity in every sense. In closing, I believe that youth, particularly those who come from marginalized community, or even non-state armed groups, or even designated terrorist groups, hold the key to reimagining our collective future. Higher education can and must be a catalyst for this transformation. By embracing pluralism and ensuring that every young person is empowered to lead, we can co-create a future rooted in understanding, empathy, and lasting peace. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Yusuke. I mean, you touched on a lot of very repetitively discussed topics, challenges in higher education, for example, access, for example, the delivery of knowledge and skills. But what is really outstanding of your remark is the generated own experience from individual students. Higher education should not just be a place for delivery, but rather a place for sharing, for collaborating, building onto those individual elements of experiences that can eventually lead to what you mentioned on understanding, and hopefully accepting and empowering those differences moving forward. So very important to stress once again those repeated challenges for us to work harder jointly on that, but also to understand that there's potential from another avenue in terms of improvement. Yes. And if I may, I think that's a perfect transition into the next question. What are some of the key examples of youth-led initiative that have successfully advanced the idea of collective humanity? And with that said, I'd like to invite Sophia again, and elaborate more on that based on your experience.
Thank you very much, Lily. First of all, to respond, I want to make reference to something that is happening in my country, Argentina. In April this year, in Argentina, a lot of people took the streets. We were almost more than 800,000 across all the country protesting for the right of higher education, but specifically for the public and free universities that we have in my country. I think it's very well known that Argentina has these free and public universities, so everyone has this right to access higher education. And it's not in question if they are going to close them or not, but they are continuing to be on a crossroad, and facing a difficult situation because, we all know that the government changed last year. And with the new president, he didn't update the budget of these universities. So they are working with the budget of last year. And in Latin America in general, but in Argentina, we have this huge problem of inflation. So since last year to this year, we've had 200 is the percentage of inflation. So a budget that is of last year, considering this inflation, is almost nothing. So that's why we took this straight to defend this right. With my organization, One Generation, we went to the protest, of course, but we also interviewed people, teachers, people from different ages, young people. And it was very moving to see what were the responses of why they were in this protest. And they were saying they were there because they never participate in anything that is political, but education means them the hope of a better life. They were able to access higher education just because these free and public university exists. Or very personal stories as people that were saying, my mom cleaned houses. I am going to school. I am going to specifically, university because of free and public universities. That was very moving because that day we were one. It doesn't matter if they were committed to education, if they're participating politically, we're all there to defend education. And also, which was something that was very interesting to know, is that everyone keep repeating the same thing. It doesn't matter if they have 16 years old, 25, or maybe 60 years old. They were saying, I'm here to protect this right for future generations. Young people, we were with the banner over this phrase that it says, we won't be the generation that let free and public university die. So in this sense, I think it's very important to take this moment and take that momentum, that because in that moment we were one. And this relates directly with this idea of collective humanity. In this moment, we were working for this, that UNESCO pushed this idea of a new social contract for education, that it says in the research in the paper of Futures of Education. The thing is how we take that and that importance we give to education to something concrete, to concrete initiative. And that's where I go to the second point, because we can preserve this right of higher education, but what kind of higher education are we giving? Are we setting the stones for future generations as well, right? Because it was also mentioned that we are receiving an education that it's old for the needs of the new generations, but also for the new challenges that we're facing. So in this sense, we need to organize, we need grassroots initiatives. That's why we aim to do in my organization One Generation, to move more young people to work for education, because the importance of this topic is there. Young people is already worried about this. It's already concerned. The ideas, the passion is there, but we need to unite. We need to organize to do something about it. That's on one side. And on the other side, I also would like to mention a concrete example that actually is intergenerational. That is of the Okayama University that I'm very honored to be representing here today. Because Okayama University is paving the way when it comes to incorporating education for sustainable development into higher education. And it's also promoting that this is included in other higher education institutions with this concept of Komikan that is very appropriate of Okayama, or community learning centers. So in this type of education, they create programs that actively support local residents to solve local and also global problems. And this is exactly what we need, right? You already mentioned, take actual form challenges that exist today and see how we face them, how we can take all this knowledge into solutions, into competences, and into new skills that it was also mentioned at the beginning. So if we actually want to education to have a future, we need these two things. On one side, working together when it comes to intergenerational work, because just youth alone cannot make changes, and not also stakeholders from today. We need to work together and put our different strengths and different ways of thinking, but also working together in the sense that we need to organize and to actually unite to create concrete solutions for the education we want and need. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sophia. Well, although you presented in a very calmly manner, the content is very much fired up. You're responding to what Janet was mentioning earlier. It is very true that we're one. And based on the two examples that you presented, it's not just we're one only in the educational space. It's that we're one in linkages to the labor market, to the current evolving workforce, and more importantly, to the communities where young people are constantly based wherever they're at. And this intergenerational approach is very much what we have to adopt moving forward, because no one can be left alone. And I would like to invite Ms. Mary McNeese, the founder of Citizens of the Solar System, and elaborate more and inspire us also on how can we ensure that young people from especially marginalized communities are fully empowered to lead their own initiatives through collaboration among different stakeholders. The floor is yours, Mary. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Nick, for inviting me. Inviting me here today. UNESCO partners. Sure. I have to say both of your presentations were very moving. I think the idea of having hope in such difficult times and your stories were very, very transformative. And it's beautiful to hear both of you speak those words. So thank you. My name is Mary. I am a strategic futurist. I've been a futurist for over 20 years now. My strength is that I interview exceptional people around the world. My expertise is primarily in primary and secondary research, which includes original one-on-one interviews with individuals. A lot of people I have interviewed are within the science field. So notable science figures such as Freeman Dyson, who is a theoretical physicist. I've interviewed Johnny Wheeler, who I'm sure many of you know here today. He was a theoretical physicist. He popularized the term quantum foam and black hole. And he also promoted this idea of a participatory universe, how we're all part of this relationship. As well as I've interviewed Robert Bigelow, who's a space entrepreneur. He's one of the first to launch the idea of creating habitats in space. I've interviewed Verna Vinjay, who actually coined the term technological singularity. And Hans Moravec, which I'm sure some of you also probably have heard of. He's a robotics genius, and his vision was looking at how AI would populate outer space. So I've been embedded in the space industry, watching its shifts, its movements, and learning along the way. I also created a nonprofit, and the nonprofit launched a program called Citizens of the Solar System. And the intention with there was to have organizations look towards creating a sustainable multi-planetary vision, realizing that we needed this multi-planetary vision, this collective humanity vision, this pluralistic visions in order to move forward as a society. Our aim was to move into higher education to do so. But as the fact I am a futurist, I was way ahead of where we are today. And so I'm so happy today that I'm sitting in a room with all of these individuals who are making this a reality and moving this forward in the spirit of this. The motto for Citizens of the Solar System was looking at the reality that Earth already floats in space. And I've heard a lot today about teaching young children and education priorities. And I think sometimes people forget that fact. We're sitting on the Earth. It looks so far away. The reminder of the fact that we are floating in space among this galaxy, that we are exploring. We are inherently involved in this wonderful outer space experience. So for us, that was the message. That is the message. That is what I believe. And again, I'm so thankful to be here to have your initiative moving forward in such a way that has collaboration, that has higher education and sincerity. To answer your question, which effective youth-led initiatives and role of higher education in collective humanity and pluralism, I think the role of higher education to drive collective humanity and pluralism is crucial. It's no secret that there have been profound difficulties faced by youth culture from marginalized communities. We know it. We see it on the news. There's poverty. There's crime. There's idea of work and school difficulties. There's even at home family, taking care of your own family because you cannot have the means or the help to do so. So these challenges, I think, have to be recognized. But I also think that the capacity for youth to have programs that are led by youth are possible. But it does need a very supportive cradle. It needs an ecosystem of support. It needs to have applied goals in order to be fulfilled. But I think if you do have mentorships, if you do have access to digital technologies, if you do have collaborations with educational programs that support leadership and project management skills, if there's a solid ongoing system of financial support that you can get contributions from the local communities as well as organizations and corporations, if there are access to scholarships, which is an incentive, and using those technologies that we just spoke about, if there's peer-to-peer networks that can be leveraged for the youth themselves so that they can become more aware of other like-minded individuals who want to succeed. I think with this ecosystem in place and the actionable guidelines, I believe that young people will have the support and the incentive to lead initiatives that in turn provide a sense of empowerment to students while strengthening the school's capacity for commitment to academic achievement. I also believe that through promoting these youth-led initiatives, other people will feel inspired and would kind of create this wave of positive change, this feeling of possibility that has that potentially has the power to inspire systemic change and a more pluralistic, collaborative society. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary, for presenting us with this participatory universe, which I don't know about other people. It's the first time that I'm hearing about it, and is allowing me to reflect on my daily life that it's actually not just
living on this planet. I'm part of the universe. And all of a sudden, the mission and the responsibilities all of a sudden, got rise into bigger thinkings on how we can, once again, moving into collective humanity and pluralism. And thank you for also presenting us with a planetary vision that us coming down to Earth, we have this very ecosystem from people to infrastructure to resources in order to support young people from equity deserving groups and moving forward with translating from the great minds we have here and beyond into tools of supportive actions on the ground. And maybe at this point, from the 3 panels that we have so fantastically been inspired and honored to be part of today, I hope we can come to this brief conclusion that looking into the future, we can have the hope, because we do have the hope of young people who understand the past, especially in terms of challenges and opportunities. We have the hope of young people who are full of passion and understanding that we need to move forward as one united form. And we have all of our other stakeholders, regardless of young or slightly more mature, ready to roll and support the young people who are more than ready to create the collective pluralism and humanity that we are all longing for. So with that said, if I may kindly invite Nick and Frances back here and allow them to move into a special call for collaboration section. Okay.
Super. Thank you for allowing me to start. I wish I had started second when we first started, because your breaking of the ice definitely broke the tension. Firstly, I'm also very glad this meeting's being recorded, because I think we have come up with some incredible ideas, and the people that have spoken have really put a lot of thought into, firstly, the way that they do these things in the world, and a lot of fantastic ideas. So I'm also glad that there are going to be AI transcripts, and we can figure out some themes from those. And I think the purpose of this whole event really is to start looking at what the next steps are, what's the actionable points, and what we're going to do going forward. And the real sort of idea, with this as well is around a workshop. And again, also one of the reasons why we invited the speakers here and the people participating is for their expertise and for the ability for us to work together to basically look forward. So, currently, and this might change as things do change, obviously. We're looking at doing this workshop in South Africa, bringing people from around the world, and obviously working with local content and creators in South Africa to move this forward. One of the core ideas with this is an idea around a space club, the idea of connecting high school students going into higher education with people within higher education institutions. Every young person that I have met in Africa, no matter which country they're in, if they are into engineering, which is part of sort of my field, they know what MIT is, and they know what these prestigious places of higher education are. And there is the idea that, by working with these institutions and with other institutions, both local institutions in regions and global institutions, that you really are going to be inspiring young people to be able to do more, and also showing them the pathways of what is possible. We're going to get into the fireside chats in a bit as well. But I think from our side, the idea of representation. So if we think about the Space Club as one of the maybe the modules that we think about in the Space Club is, what does food security look like for astronauts on Mars? And this is a way to get young people's attention into thinking about that stuff. And then to take it further and say, what does food security look like in Uganda? And how has food security in Uganda been solved for tens of thousands of years to get young people in these places to go out into their communities and to be able to find these solutions. And I think for far too long, we've looked at indigenous solutions that have worked for sometimes millions of years as if it doesn't look a certain way, it's not as valuable. And the idea is to get young people across the world to realize that no matter where they are, there have been valuable solutions that have been used to solve problems for hundreds of thousands of years. That's
Well, Nick. Well, first of all, thank you very much. I think this is the last time you're going to hear from me during this event, I think. So thank you very much. I think that it has been really, so far, and it's going to continue with the fire chats, an inspiring event. Let me just share with you a few ideas. Some of them are going to be just rephrasing what Nick has said, but some others are going to connect up with the recent past. I think that someone already referred to the Second World War, and I just wanted to mention that UNESCO, the organization we are working for, was created in 1945, just immediately after the Second World War. And we still keep the same motto, which reads as follows: since wars begin in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that the defenses of peace must be constructed. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know to what extent we should say men and women today, but certainly at that time it was only about men. Okay. And I think it's very important to realize that UNESCO has, as a member of the UN family, has chosen the path of working in three key areas. One is culture. How important it is for a country to have, a site that becomes a patrimony of the humanity. The second one is education, and we're talking about higher education, certainly. But the third one is science, because science is a universal language that helps us to understand the world we live in. Of course, there are many ways of understanding the world, but science is one of them. And I think that I have heard the references to citizen science, which I think is crucial. And one of the things that we hear constantly from companies all over the world, including also the global south, is that companies expect university graduates to have more than the skills, in a way, attached to their disciplines. They expect three critical skills. One is problem solving. The second one is communication, public communication. And the third one is teamwork. Now, when I was hearing the range of activities you were describing as you did, Nick, I was thinking that the space journey, as we used to say, is really a window of opportunity to promote, among other things, not only the knowledge of the space and the discovery of new scientific grounds, but probably a way of helping young people to develop, among others, these three skills. Once again, problem solving, communication, and teamwork. Now, I was asking to myself when I was hearing what you were saying, what's the added value of this commitment to a space in comparison to other, I would say, issues and problems that are planetary? Remember, we recently had the COVID-19, which was a challenge. We have the climate challenge. And no one would say that you could expect to find a solution within the boundaries of your frontiers, of your national frontiers. We have to go that there will be a global contribution of universal science to address those challenges. Now, someone has said, I don't remember who, sorry, so many people, so many panels, and I didn't take note, but someone referred to I think there was a Portuguese scientist who said that the space is still, or can still be seen as a common good for all of us. And I would add to that it could be a participatory common good, and for the time being, it has no proprietor. Okay, which I think is something that we have to keep in mind. Now, coming down to Earth, so to say, in terms of things that UNESCO could contribute and hope to develop jointly with Interstellar Foundation, 4 things I would say. One is we have seen throughout the day how important it is to empower youth voices. I think that many of you have said that we have so many things to learn, not only in terms of making sure that science makes progress, but also in terms of helping those now children and youth really to become global citizens. I think that's the first point. And we're doing that already so much as we can at UNESCO. Second, something that has been mentioned in passing is South-South cooperation. I think that certainly we know where science is being created. Okay, we know that. But you have to know as well that according to UNESCO data, of all international aid going to higher education in the global south, from the north to the global south, only 17% remains in the country. 83% is in terms of scholarships for students going from those countries in the global south to the global north. Okay, so to some extent, we need to develop, as Nick has suggested, forms of partnership between the universities and higher education institutions, research centers in the global south with the global north in a way that is not simply exploiting the talent that the global south already has. Okay, so we have to be more equitable when it comes to that. Third aspect, which I think is also important, and I'm glad to see that in this room we have more women than men, which is really unusual. Really unusual in a conversation that talks about, science and space. So I'm so glad to be here. But certainly we have a gap. Okay. And this gap of female participation in science, and I guess space science as well, is really a gap that needs to be addressed. UNESCO is also promoting the engagement of women in science, but we face really, really difficult cultural barriers. Okay. So whatever contribution, even in terms of emulation, seeing here, female astronauts or instructors, whatever, scientists, professors, is really, really a nice opportunity to make sure that girls in the global south see, okay, I could be not only an astronaut, but also a female astronaut, or a female science. And finally, Nick has also referred to that. We have plenty of indigenous knowledge. Okay. I remember myself over the past years where I have been living in Latin America. I have been in touch with the Inca, the Maya, the Mexica cultures. And you realize how amazing the knowledge of the astronomy was in these cultures. All that has been lost, unfortunately. But still, there are remainings of that indigenous culture that talk about different approaches to the universe. And I think that there is so much to learn, because remember that one of the topics we are discussing today is precisely pluralism. And it's not only about the pluralism in political ideas, but it's also the pluralism in ways of understanding our world. Okay. So we have a common good in front of us. We have the opportunity, to build partnerships. Let's go for that. Thank you.
Literally. Yes. Super. Into the next, straight into the next panel. Fireside chats. Amazing. That's great. Before we get started, I just also would love to thank Elian and Lily for not just the event, but for just the incredible work that you guys do and the incredible problem-solving partnership that has been working with you to organize everything. We faced many challenges, and we have shifted and we've moved, and it's been just incredible. And I really appreciate just the effort. And they were up at I saw they lost my. I was asleep. I saw they lost my shit. Well,
as much like space flight as possible, right?
Oh yeah, yes, yeah. It's quite incredible. So in terms of this fireside chat, so this is kind of getting into basically the messages that we send to space. What should be included in those messages, and specifically how can higher education be participating in how we basically put these messages together. So I'd watched a documentary about 3 years ago, and the first people I thought of when I thought of who would it take to build messages to go to space was people in higher education. It was professors, it was people who had worked on the problem, but it was also people from an incredibly diverse section of higher education. So, we've got, from linguistics to the sciences as you would think, but there's also, we think about what is communication. So like that is the, how do we communicate over vast timescales? How do we communicate in a way that whoever finds the message, if they have absolutely no reference of us or have no context of who we are, how would they understand our message? So there's the communication part, but then there's also how do we represent ourselves? And maybe even more importantly, how do we want to represent ourselves? Do we want to represent ourselves just the maths and the physics and the stuff that we know and we're very good at solving these problems, or we've built AI because whatever we say now is going to look very, very silly probably in 50,000 years anyway. Or do we want to represent the creativity and the art and the things that make us human? And I think the last 3 years and just working with these incredible scientists and academics in different institutions in higher education, I think almost the most important thing for me that I think the project holds is the ability for people to explore the idea themselves. If you think about what you wanted to send into space and you start to explore what is important, what does it mean to be human, what are the things that, I hate using the word define us, but in some way help to explain who we are. It's an incredibly fulfilling exploration. And I think it also comes back to maybe even something Daniel said earlier, that we're kind of amazing as a species. We have an ability, and we have done some really incredible things to all get here. It is very imperfect, and we have so much work to do. But from a generational perspective, we are better than we were 50 years ago or 100 years ago. And I'm gonna, that's a long ramble to get us to the first question, but I did want to sort of open it up to say, when we think about sending messages to space, what sort of comes up as something that for you is important?
Difficult to say, but, the message I would send would be something as simple as, look at you. That would say, that would probably be the most important message that I would send. I would consider that from space, we should send the message that we are here. Consider us a mirror of your capacity as human being, so look at yourselves. That would be my message.
I love this. Okay, so I'm going to open it up to the group. Does anybody want to maybe start off? Oh, sorry. I'm being a very bad host. I forgot to do actual introductions. So, again, Mr. Jonathan Jang, scientist, JPL, over 300 academic papers. I listened the last time. Thank you. Yep. Jacob, Blassus, so he is the executive director of the Global Student Forum. If I'm not mistaken, one of the largest student forums in the world. Yes. Fantastic. Just a quick one. Could you give us just a brief overview of the Global Student Forum?
Of course. So the Global Student Forum is an umbrella organization of student organizations. There's 280 national and international organizations from 135 countries and territories. And it's encompassing around 5,900 local student organizations across the world. And the idea is really, can we bring student organizations together across the world and bring their capacities together and stand together as a broader student movement? Because there's so much work going on with students having a voice at their local institutions. And that's been for many, many years. And it's really, in some countries, it's in national laws that, of course, students need to be part of shaping education. And others places is still in development. And the idea of the Global Student Forum is, can we bring those experiences into global spaces also? Because, some of our members have been incredibly powerful at bringing student voices into decision-making spaces at regional levels, like in the European Union or in the African Union with the European Students' Union and All Africa Students' Union, bringing those perspectives into it. So we always go back and say, can we bring perspectives from that local experience all the way into global decision-making spaces, because there is that growing recognition of the value of young people's voices in shaping the future. But if we are to do that, we cannot just say, I feel like I know a young person. Let's invite them in and I think I have a daughter. Let's make her part of decision making. We can't really do that. If you want to meaningfully engage young people, we need to say, okay, how are they bringing the broadest representational perspective into decision-making processes? So that's what we spend a lot of time doing.
Amazing. Thank you. I think it gives much more context. And somebody who's taught me a lot about context, Professor Karen Lewis, who is the Professor of Philosophy of Language at Columbia University. Also somebody that I've worked with a lot in creating messages, so actually putting messages together that go to space. And I also, why, when I'd sent you this first email, like what kind of, well, as a professor of linguistics, what kind of brought you to say, cool, let's figure out a way to send messages into space?
Sure. So thanks, Nick, and thanks for having me here. So when Nick reached out to me when he was starting up the Interstellar Foundation to see if I'd be interested in joining, as somebody who thinks about language a lot, and I think how to communicate to an audience that's potentially intelligent extraterrestrials and not even humans, these messages that are going to go out into space. And, everything went amazingly well. Well, off chance was picked up by intelligent extraterrestrials. But that's the aim. So we want to be interpretable by them. But even if not, these messages that'll be out there for hundreds or thousands of years and may likely be later, received by distant future humans or the descendants of humans. How to make that kind of message so that it's actually understandable by the intended audience really is a philosophical question. Right? It's a question that was right to the heart of the things that I like to think about in my research in philosophy of language. It's a question of sort of what is meaning? How do we communicate with each other? How do we interpret each other? So a lot of my research has to do with the ways in which context. So Nick always says, I use the word context like 20 times at every meeting we have. That's just my role on the team. So I do a lot of research about context and how context affects our interpretation. And if we think of these kinds of messages that we want to send into space, they're essentially contextless messages, which makes it very hard to interpret them. And when we interpret each other, we already talked today about how hard it is to interpret each other across cultures, right? But we still have shared cognitive architecture. Our brains are fundamentally the same. We have some shared human experience. When we're sending something out to distant human descendants or ETI, we're sending it to people or to beings who potentially interpret it, who have no shared experience at all of this, possibly very different cognitive architecture. Furthermore, when we talk to people or even do experience in animal communication, we have other kinds of contexts, like what situation are we in? What's the behavior that we're observing? And we can use that to help interpret each other. They have none of that. And so part of what we think on this team, that question that really interested me, is how to send a message that creates its own context so that it's potentially understandable by the recipients. And I want to say one more thing, just to throw in the philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein. I don't think I've ever brought this up in our meetings, but he once said, he's a philosopher of language, and he once said, if a lion could speak, we wouldn't understand it. And I don't necessarily agree with that, because his point was that even if we could somehow have like a translation between lion language and ours, our shared experience of our lives and what a lion's life is like so different that we just would not be able to interpret whatever the lion said. And so that's something I think about a lot when I'm doing these kinds of messages, to think like, lions have more in common with us in some ways that extraterrestrials do. And so how would I make this? But there's other ways in which extraterrestrials might have more in common with us. And thinking about those ways is a starting point for this kind of message.
Fantastic. Thank you. Jonathan, so, my first ever academic paper that was published was with Jonathan, my one and only academic paper. One of his, thank you, one of his 3 handwriting. And I think even since we started working together, I think what you've always been able to do incredibly well is sort of look at the intergenerational dialogue, right? In the way that you have brought people together, to essentially form these very sort of strong partnerships in these teams. And I think, I'm not sure how many people were on the team that we'd looked at for the Beacon in Space message, but, you know, how have you, or why do you think that it's important to sort of really look at these intergenerational dialogue?
Right. And, at the Caltech, I have about 20 people, half a student, and as young as they are 13, 14 years old. And so to work on this together and to create a message to be sent out to the deep space. And I think what message we want to send will truly represent who we are. Okay. We can somebody send me an image about the military parade, you know, and say the military parade to show humans are very aggressive. Or somebody send me an image, you know, a group of families, you know, having dinner together, you know, to share some family moment. Or we want to create a message. We're truly trying to make that, you know, two students and so from Caltech. One is from Palestinian, one is they hug together to say we are friends. Okay, these are powerful images, you know, to say who we are. You know, we as human, we are weakened about 1 million years ago. Our ancestors work on the earth. They invented the fires and simple tools. They invented agricultures, all the way to invented mathematics, discovered physics, and all the way to invented rockets into space. And at the same time, we invented nuclear bombs, okay, biological weapons, maybe the climate change. You know, the way the climate change is because all the energies we use, the food, everything from the sun. Our technology have advanced to a level. The energy from the sun is not enough. So we are using up the energy from the sun millions, 100 millions ago, provided to us in terms of fossil fuel and coal and natural gases, to the point the carbon dioxide level is shooting as high as it's accelerating. So we are destroying the environment in the next 100 years or so. So we have a choice and to survive. Okay. Survive does not mean 100 years from now. Survive means thousands of years, maybe millions of years into the future, so we can reach for the stars. At this point, and what message we want to send to represent humans? And at the Caltech, we have a weekly meeting to discuss, and everybody decided to create a 10-second video clips to bring 100 people from every corner on the earth to speak 100 different languages to say we are friends. In English, we say we are friends. In Chinese, we say 我们是朋友. In Japanese, we say 私と小田は友達です. And in South Korea, say 我们亲不了. In French, in Spanish, to say we are friends. We want to record that video clips on the beach, in the forest, on mountaintop, in the city, in the countryside, to showcase not only diversity of the human species and also diversity of the earth. So that will be a powerful message to showcase we are from. So of course, somebody said, John Bloomberg said, do we want to send out a negative message to be balanced, to say who we are? And I remember Carl Sagan decided in Golden Record, we only send positive messages. So as we want to do it, that's for the education purposes, to have the young kids to know what is the positive side of human species. Okay. We want to be the positive side. We want to against the dark side of human species, so people can learn, oh, that's the model, that's the example to represent human being as education purposes. So that is my answer to your questions, you know, how to bring that message into space.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
And again, I think just also working together on these messages, I think it becomes quite clear as well that it's the importance of the message to ourselves.
That's right. Yeah.
So, you know, these are very small messages on very small spacecraft going very, very far, and there's lots of space out there. But the transformative thing that happens when we work on these messages is quite powerful. That, you know, we really do kind of get into what it's trying to get into, what it means to be human. I'm wondering, from the perspective of how maybe even sort of UNESCO, so even when we first started, one of the key organizations that we wanted to work with was with UNESCO. We started working with the UNESCO archiving team. So Ing and different people on the team, and I actually met with sort of the head of UNESCO archives yesterday. And we often talk about things like, we put constitutions onto our last message. We put every constitution in the world.
That's right.
And we then think about how constitutions have changed. And when we're trying to sort of describe a species of humans, we think about, what are the interesting things and whenever somebody finds this message, what would they want to find interesting? And I'm wondering sort of where you think, sort of UNESCO and United Nations, I'm not too sure exactly. I should have better thought the question. I've got the statement. I just can't figure out the question now. But yeah, where do you see sort of maybe UNESCO's place and not necessarily in the doing of a message, but from a philosophical perspective, where UNESCO holds in the world and how that's kind of explains who we are as humans.
Yeah. I think when you first asked the question about what message I would send to the outer space, I thought of a message that could be read from the Earth. Okay. So I think, and somehow, what you described as an initiative, those 100 friends, probably unknown friends,
different countries, without race.
Exactly. Yeah. Is in itself, the process of building those messages is in itself a learning opportunity for the humanity. So I don't know whether those messages are going to be seen or watched by everyone, anywhere. But I think that the process of acknowledging that we have in our hands a common future, it is where UNESCO and probably other UN agencies come to the play. I think that we are the ones expected. I don't know if we do that in a proper way, but certainly one of the missions of UNESCO is to make sure that the cultural patrimony of humanity is preserved. Okay. And we are seeing many cases where that patrimony is being destroyed. Second point, I'm going to mention as well, when you talk about friends in different places, I was thinking about as well as not only, I would say different gender identities. That's also part of the work UNESCO.
That's right.
Is, bringing those differences up to the table. I think that this is really important. So, the third, I would say, message here is that we grow as a species. And I think that UNESCO is also preserving our past. And when I mention the UNESCO Constitution, I'm not 100% sure if I would send that Constitution to the outer space because it talks about war, and I would be rather in favor of you just making sure that we send a positive message. And that's why I would like to conclude by simply saying that no matter if sometime in the near or, distant future, someone reads or watches those images, I think that mobilizing the resources for, different communities, countries, identities to work together in what is the image and I know I acknowledge the reference to God, but what's the public image that we would like to have as a humanity? That's already, a positive aspect, no matter if it's going to be useful for everyone or not. I think that the process in itself is really a very positive one, and UNESCO would like to be part of that. I'm pretty sure.
Fantastic. Jacob, as an executive director myself of a foundation that is far smaller and far less moving pieces and far less the need, which I'm sure, as you are the executive director of sort of one of the largest global networks. In terms of, sorry, I've lost the question again. Actually, yes. Okay. So as the executive director of one of the largest global networks, unity, cooperation, and pluralism How do you guys facilitate this within the different organizations that are involved? And what do you think are the ways to improve the way that we can be looking at unity and cooperation between stakeholders, between organizations, between individuals, to come to some sort of a common goal?
I think one of the key things for us is we don't go around and assume that, our whole membership agrees on everything. That would be incredible and weird and strange and completely against everything that humanity is. Because I think it is really about that diversity of different perspectives and of experiences of cultures. And when we try to bring organizations and students together across the world, we always say that, we can bring us together on these things, but we need to be able to handle that we disagree on things, and we disagree fundamentally on a lot of things. And I think that is what makes our organization work. And I think for the greater humanity in this question, that's also a lesson that we have to learn, because we need to become comfortable with having many different perspectives on things. And that is it's a core human thing. We can come together in our hope for a better future and our hope for a shared humanity. But if we are just thinking that we can reach some kind of everyone believing the same thing, everyone believing the same kind of experiences, same kind of perspectives and things, then we will never be successful because, and I think it would be counter to our core mission. And I think in the Global Student Forum, there's a lot of discussions always. And I think that's really our strength. Now, with everything going on with Israel and with Palestine and in the whole region, we see that because we have member organizations in all these places, and they come from very different perspectives. And we need to be comfortable having those conversations. So I would say now in these days of the Summit of the Future, I know that a lot of the negotiations around the big kind of outcome declarations are really, really struggling here in the end, because people need to they need to come together, and they know they need to come together, but it's so difficult. And are we willing to move on those small things? Are we willing to come together? Are we willing to find those kind of ways of phrasing that includes everyone? And that's a matter of perspective. And I think it's a thing that we're still trying to learn, both us as students, but I think greater as countries and as a shared humanity. And I think there is that thing that, when we eventually meet, a species from another place, that comes with a completely different perspective, are we then ready to have the conversations? Have we grown comfortable in our diversity? Maybe at that moment we would really quickly get comfortable. But I would make the case that we should do that before, because it is the direction that we need to go into to actually make it possible.
I woke up in a sweat one night after about 6 months of working on this project, thinking that we're starting this project and we're going to do this thing. And if aliens do land, we'll probably be the people that know the most about how to speak to them. And we'll probably have to be drawn into meetings. But I think it's a really sort of interesting idea in terms of from an agreement perspective, because I think, putting messages together, we inform the same thing. It's there's very much a subjective thing of which Bruce Springsteen's song is the best. And if you can only send one, which one do you send? Not necessarily Bruce Springsteen, but all types of music. And coming to agreement, I think is really important.
So thank you all so much for the very, and allow us to thank the Foundation again. And all of our distinguished representatives across the world, including Partnership Accelerator in collaboration with DISA, Global Center for Pluralism, Global Student Forum, UNESCO SDG for Use and Student Network, UNESCO IESALC People Network, UNESCO Chair, Youth Ambassador of Okayama University, One Generation Foundation, Columbia University, Future of Space, NASA, Deep Space Initiative, Accept International, Higher Orbit Foundation, International Institute for Astronautical Sciences, Janus Planet, SDSM Portugal, and Citizens of the Solar System. And we look forward to bringing on more partners. And we're not going to be able to even go through the list in 3 hours. That was so bad. Yep.